In the ancient valleys of Israel, where the sun blazed hot upon rocky hills and the wind carried whispers of war, two armies stood facing each other. On one side, the mighty Philistine army, warriors renowned for their strength and brutality. On the other, the army of Israel, the chosen people of God, led by their nervous King Saul. For 40 days, these two forces had been locked in a stalemate, separated by the valley of Elah. But this was no ordinary standoff. Every morning and every evening, a giant emerged from the Philistine camp, his shadow stretching across the valley like a dark omen. His name was Goliath of Gath, and he was a sight that struck terror into the hearts of the bravest men. Standing over 9 feet tall, his bronze armor gleamed in the sunlight like scales of a dragon. The coat of armor alone weighed 125 pounds. His legs were protected by bronze greaves, and a bronze javelin was slung between his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and its iron point weighed 15 pounds. His shield-bearer walked before him, struggling under the weight of the massive shield. Day after day, Goliath would stride to the front lines and issue his challenge, his voice booming across the valley like thunder. "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? And are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us." Then he would laugh, a terrible sound that echoed off the hills. "This day I defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other." King Saul and all the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. Not one soldier dared to face the giant. Who could possibly defeat such a monster? It seemed an impossible task. Far from the battlefield, in the small town of Bethlehem, lived a young shepherd named David. He was the youngest of 8 sons of a man named Jesse. While his 3 oldest brothers had joined Saul's army, David stayed home, tending his father's sheep in the fields around Bethlehem. David was no ordinary shepherd. He had a heart full of courage and a spirit that burned with love for God. Many times, when lions or bears had come to attack his flock, David had fought them off with his bare hands and his simple sling. He knew that God was with him, protecting him in every moment of danger. One day, Jesse called David to him. "Take this roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread for your brothers," he said. "Hurry to their camp and see how they are. Take along these 10 cheeses to the commander of their unit. Find out how your brothers are doing and bring back some assurance from them." David rose early the next morning, left the sheep with another shepherd, and set out as his father had directed. He arrived at the camp just as the army was going out to its battle positions, shouting the war cry. As David talked with his brothers, greeting them and distributing the food his father had sent, a familiar and terrible sound rolled across the valley. Goliath stepped forward from the Philistine lines and shouted his usual defiance. David watched as the Israelite soldiers, upon hearing the giant's words, turned and ran in fear. Their faces were pale, their hands trembling. "Do you see how this man keeps coming out?" the soldiers whispered to each other. "He comes out to defy Israel. The king will give great wealth to the man who kills him. He will also give him his daughter in marriage and will exempt his family from taxes in Israel." David turned to the men standing near him. "What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" The men repeated the reward to him. But David's concern wasn't about gold or marriage or honors. He was outraged that this pagan giant dared to mock the God of Israel. David's oldest brother, Eliab, overheard him speaking with the men and burned with anger. "Why have you come down here?" he demanded. "And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down only to watch the battle." But David wasn't deterred. "What have I done now? Can't I even speak?" He turned away and asked others the same questions, and they gave him the same answer. Word of David's bold questions reached King Saul, and he sent for the young shepherd. When David stood before the king, the contrast couldn't have been more striking. Saul was tall and impressive, dressed in royal robes. David was young, ruddy-faced, with bright eyes and the simple clothing of a shepherd. "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine," David said to Saul. "Your servant will go and fight him." Saul looked at him in disbelief. "You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth." But David replied with quiet confidence, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." There was something in David's voice, a ring of truth and faith, that moved Saul. "Go," the king said, "and the Lord be with you." Then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on Saul's sword over the tunic and tried walking around, because he was not used to them. "I cannot go in these," David said to Saul, "because I am not used to them." So he took them off. David walked to a nearby stream. He chose 5 smooth stones from the brook and put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag. Then, with his sling in his hand, he approached the Philistine. The valley seemed to hold its breath as the shepherd boy walked forward. On both hillsides, thousands of soldiers watched in stunned silence. Was this some kind of joke? Had the Israelites sent a child to mock the mighty Goliath? Goliath, with his shield bearer in front of him, kept coming closer to David. He looked David over and saw that he was little more than a boy, glowing with health and handsome in appearance. And he despised him. "Am I a dog?" Goliath roared, "that you come at me with sticks?" He cursed David by his gods. "Come here," he said, "and I'll give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals." The giant's voice dripped with contempt and rage. How dare these Israelites insult him by sending a mere boy? He would crush this child and feed him to the vultures. But David wasn't afraid. He stood tall, his young voice clear and strong as it carried across the valley. "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands." These weren't the words of a frightened boy. This was a young man who knew his God, who had experienced God's faithfulness in the fields with the sheep, and who trusted completely that God would deliver him now. As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it with all his might. The stone flew through the air, a small projectile against a mountain of a man. But it found its mark with divine precision, striking Goliath on the forehead. The giant's eyes went wide with shock. The stone sank deep into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground with a thunderous crash that seemed to shake the very earth. The mighty Goliath of Gath, champion of the Philistines, terror of armies, lay dead before a shepherd boy. David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword and drew it from the sheath. After he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran in panic and terror. The men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a great shout and pursued the Philistines. The valley that had been filled with fear was now filled with the sounds of victory. The Israelites returned from chasing the Philistines and plundered their camp, claiming the spoils of war. David took the Philistine's head and brought it to Jerusalem, and he placed the weapons in his own tent. That day, David went from being an unknown shepherd to becoming a national hero. But David didn't see himself as the victor. He knew that God had won the battle. The glory belonged to the Lord alone. This ancient story echoes through the centuries with timeless truths that speak to us today. First, faith conquers fear. David wasn't fearless because he was brave by nature or strong in himself. He was fearless because he knew God was with him. When everyone else saw an unbeatable giant, David saw an opportunity for God to show his power. Our giants today might be illness, financial struggles, broken relationships, or seemingly impossible challenges. Like David, we can face them with faith, knowing we don't fight alone. Second, God uses the unlikely and the underestimated. Nobody would have chosen David. He was too young, too inexperienced, too unimportant. Even his own brother mocked him. But God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. Your background, your age, your limitations, none of these disqualify you from being used by God for great purposes. What matters is your heart and your willingness to trust Him. Third, past faithfulness prepares us for future battles. David's confidence didn't come from nowhere. He had fought lions and bears in the quiet fields where no one was watching. He had been faithful in small things, and God had proven faithful to him. Those private victories gave him the courage for this public battle. The challenges you face today, the small acts of faithfulness when no one is watching, these are preparing you for greater things tomorrow. Fourth, we must fight with the weapons God has given us. David couldn't wear Saul's armor. It didn't fit him, and he wasn't trained in it. He had to use what God had already placed in his hands: his sling, his stones, his shepherd's experience. Don't try to be someone else or use someone else's methods. God has equipped you uniquely for your specific calling. Trust the gifts and experiences He has given you. Fifth, the battle belongs to the Lord. This is perhaps the most important lesson of all. David made it clear that he wasn't fighting in his own strength or for his own glory. He fought in the name of the Lord, and he fought so that the world would know there is a God in Israel. When we face our battles with this perspective, seeking God's glory rather than our own, everything changes. The pressure is off us because the outcome is in His hands. Finally, courage is contagious. One person's faith can inspire a nation. When the Israelite army saw David's victory, they found their own courage and pursued the enemy. Your act of faith, your step of courage, might be exactly what someone else needs to see to find their own strength. Never underestimate the impact of your obedience to God. The story of David and Goliath reminds us that no giant is too big for God. No obstacle is insurmountable when we trust in His power rather than our own. The same God who guided that stone to Goliath's forehead is the same God who walks with us today, ready to fight our battles if we'll trust Him. David would go on to become the greatest king of Israel, a man after God's own heart. But it all began in a valley, with a young shepherd, 5 smooth stones, and unshakable faith in the God who saves. What giant are you facing today? What impossible situation stands between you and your calling? Remember David. Remember that the battle belongs to the Lord. Step forward in faith, use what God has placed in your hands, and watch Him work miracles. Thank you so much for watching this retelling of one of the Bible's most powerful stories. I hope it has encouraged your heart and strengthened your faith. Remember, no matter what giants you're facing, God is bigger, and He is with you. If this video blessed you, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to hear this message of courage and faith today. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more inspiring biblical stories and teachings that will strengthen your walk with God. And please, hit that bell icon so you'll be notified whenever we upload new content. We have so many more incredible stories from Scripture to explore together. May you walk in courage, trust in God's faithfulness, and face your giants with the confidence that comes from knowing the Lord Almighty fights for you. Until next time, God bless you.